And welcome back. Let's go ahead and continue work with our game. Of course, we previously had our shuttle set up here. But what we want to do is set up a way to have a container that can contain not just the 3D model, but also a lot of the other things that we want to kind of go on with the player. So let's go ahead and here in our hierarchy, let's go ahead and create ourselves an empty. And let's just go ahead and call this the player. And we're going to go ahead and start by making sure that this player object, you can see right now it's right here. I actually want to reset the transform on that just so that way it's centered. And so you can see it now exists all the way over here. And I'm going to go ahead and move the shuttle into the player object as well. And let's go ahead and reset the transform on that too, just so that way everything's kind of nice in the middle. Now, of course, mine did flip a little bit here, which means I do need to make sure I adjust that rotation of that so I can get that shuttle pointing the way that I want it to. And now that I got this all nice and centered, let's go ahead and grab our player object, not the shuttle, but the player itself. And let's actually just drag that on over so that it can be part of this platform once again. So I'm just going to go ahead and move that on over. Kind of get that roughly center there. And that's, again, going to be a good starting point. We, of course, also have our scripts that we've been working with. So let me just go ahead and pop on up to our scripts folder here. Collapse this. We don't need this open right now. And we have our player movement script, which we can then attach not to our shuttle here. We actually want to put that onto the player itself. So let's grab our player movement script and add that there. So let's pop on over to our code and actually get ready to do a couple changes here. The first thing we need to, of course, address is, I'm going to go ahead and just clean up this a little bit, is we want to basically drive input here, right? Because we have this model, we want to do input. So the way we can do this is very similar to things that we've done before. We can bring in our serialized field, and the type of serialized we want is, because we have this input system, we actually want to use input action. And we can, of course, give this a defined term. It's suggesting action. Maybe we want, since this is a rocket or like a space shuttle or whatever you want it to be, you can call this thrust. You can call it whatever the most appropriate term that you want it to be. Again, you can make it whatever you want it. But for our purposes, let's just go ahead and, since this is our player movement, action is a perfectly fine one here for us to use. Though I do like to kind of customize my variables and keep them appropriate. So since this is a rocket, or in my case a shuttle, and we're going to kind of be potentially moving upward, we can call maybe this the upward. We'll call this upward action. All right, and so now that that is created, we can then use a new technique that we haven't talked about before. We talked, of course, about in the past about things like start, and we've talked about awake. But there's actually another one that's called on enable that actually is in between those. And so enable is just another state that we can use to bring information in about these game objects. So what we're going to want to use is our upward action dot enable. Capital, there we go. And what this does is says on enable. Notice we want to make it so this action is now available for us to use. All right, and so if we look here at our place in Unity, we can see our player movement script has this upward action, and you can see we now have a area where we can add things. And so if I click on that little plus there, I have the option to add a binding. And that allows us to easily come in and add keybinds that we want to use. So if I go ahead and double click on that, it brings up this little binding window here, and I can then choose, what do I want to bind this actual object with, right? What do I want to have this path run to? So I can either click this little arrow here, and you can see I can go manually search for something, or I can also press on listen, and it's going to listen for input, so it's going to be taking whatever the next key press is. So for example, if I press spacebar, it's going to go ahead and, oh, you wanted to use spacebar, and so I can go ahead and double click that on space for keyboard, and then I will actually add that as an option for binding. And you can see if I click off, there it is. And I could actually do more here, so let's just go and do another add binding. And I'm going to double click. And let's go ahead and choose path. Let's go ahead this time and choose gamepad. And we can choose different options in here. So for example, if let's say I want my X key to be a certain thing. So for example, I have my D-pad here. Or I have my different buttons on the north, south, east, west. I have a whole bunch of different options We have left trigger, right trigger, a whole bunch of different things there that I can do. Let's just go ahead and for this time, let's choose to use the right trigger. That should be perfectly fine. I just want to show you that you have different options here of how you can configure this. And so if you wanted, let's say instead of space, let's say you want that to be enter, you could easily do that as well. Now, as our code stands here right now, if I go and I press spacebar, it's going to look like nothing's happening. And a good way to test this out to see if we actually have input working the way we expect it to is we can come in here and add another method. In this case, let's go ahead and bring back in our update method, which we of course had just removed, but it's okay. We can easily bring that back in. And we're just going to use an if statement here and just look to see if this button has been used. So remember, we of course have just mapped our upward action button. And so we can of course then use .isPressed. And so that is a good way to just look to see, is this key currently being pressed? And that's just a quick little bit of code. And then what we can do is something that we've done quite often. We can just add a debug statement. And so I can come here at debug.log and I can say attempting to lift off. And so now, of course, I should have a quick if statement that if I press, for example, spacebar, I should see this message appear in my console. All right, and so let's go ahead and get things set up so we can have our player, of course, in game and all this stuff, to kind of actually see the stuff start happening. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust the main camera here now, because right now, of course, the main camera is just kind of staring off here into the wilderness. So I'm going to want to have that so that this thing is adjusted where I can see it actually looking here at the player. So easiest way to do this is, of course, to take my camera object and start dragging this along. I'm going to have to probably make a couple adjustments here because you can see it's really kind of close up. So I'm just going to adjust that, drag it back a little bit, and kind of make it so that way it's looking more at the player. And again, we can play around with this layer. We can do some camera adjustments later on. But this is just something so I can see this shuttle here kind of off the get-go. And so now that that is done, let's just do a quick save, and let's go ahead and run our game. Flip over to our console, and let's go ahead and start pressing spacebar, see if we get anything to pair up. If we aren't seeing anything, then that means we need to double check our player here, make sure that we have our player movement script all configured. And of course, I realized literally just a second ago what my whole problem was, is that I wasn't actually active in the game. So I was here pressing, nothing was happening. Got to click back into the game window there, and now you can see we have attempting to lift off. And if I press that spacebar, you can see, or if I just hold it, how that count just increases. So excellent, our game is working, so we are in good shape here to go ahead and continue work with our project to get a game that's really going to kind of have some cool things happening.